1, 2, 3. Aye! Thank you so much, CDJS.
Engineering manager at Sigistore. I did it correct the last name and then I messed it up on the other. Okay, so what I wish I had known about front-end user tracking. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, okay. Hey everyone. So at SingleStore, we have been trying to draw insights from data to improve our user experience based on this kind of data. So as you can imagine, we need to collect a lot of data based on user interactions and on the client side flow. So today I'm going to ask you, by a show of hands, who uses analytics at their product or company? Okay, that's nice. And who feels like knowing the ins and outs of the analytics? Okay, yeah. So today I'm going to share with you what I wish I had known about front-end user tracking. So I'm Marta. I'm an engineering manager at SingleStore. I'm from Portugal. And SingleStore is a database that powers both analytics and transactional workloads. And we have the option to use it on premises. So if you deploy on your own servers or on the cloud. So you can just sign up and start using. In a couple of seconds, you have SingleStore deployed and running in the cloud for free. So I encourage everyone to give it a try. And jumping on the analytics topic, to give you some context. So as I was saying, we have the cloud option. So we have a web application and we have our website and public-facing documentation. So a lot of applications. And these applications connect to Segment and through Segment to integrate with all the services we're using for analytics. So they are Mixpanel, Google Analytics, Sentry, and some other services. And by using Segment, we don't need to make changes in our code or deploy a new version if we want to make any change to these integrated services. So Segment has been a real lifesaver for us, and this leads me to my first advice, which is if you can afford, use a tool like Segment. So I'm not here to advertise Segment. There are a lot of other options like Posthog or Heap, Phantom Analytics. So there are a lot of options that you can consider, but consider using one tool that help you managing your analytics workloads. And another thing that I learned is that you can track usage even before sign up. So this kind of tools have a feature called Anonymous ID. And if you don't use the Anonymous ID, you can track the data before the sign up. And then after the sign up, you know who the users are, and you have the flow and the data about their interactions. But you can't correct.
Although if you're using this anonymous ID feature, after basically the tool generates an ID that it's saved on the client side, and when the user signs up, and then we have the unique ID that we are going to use for the whole flow of analytics. The tool, in this case, Segment, just correlates the ID that was generated here with a unique ID that we are going to use further. And this means that you have access to the big picture, and we know that what user did before signing up. So which pages in our website they visited, or the documentation, wherever you want to track, you can track it. But these tools don't do everything, right? We still need to code something. And this leads me to my next advice, code-wise, which is build a common analytics library from day one. And this has worked for us. And let me show an example. So you can have, for example, your cookies banner or your logic to track the events in a library. And this makes it way easier to share and to share the logic between all components. And we all know the perks of reusable code. So if you want to go a step further, you can create a package for this, and you can even reuse it across all of your products or projects. And this becomes even better because you have everything centralized in just one place. And now you might be thinking that you need a super complex API or building writing a lot of code. But my next advice is build the API that suits your needs in the near future. So especially if you have a product in an early stage, and event tracking is very likely to be forgotten, and developers don't want to spend a lot of time with this, Make it easy. Build this culture around data first, and then worry about the structure and the complexity. And this is the example of our track function in the beginning. So we were just accepting a name ID and a bunch of properties. No structure, no validation, and it worked. But then we felt like we were needing some validation and some structure because we had a lot of features and a lot of events. It was hard to find them. So if you feel like you're in a point where you already have this data culture foster and you need this more mature API, then you might want to consider to have a proper structured schema and a function that accepts some kind of params and it's validated. And this was the example that we migrated after. So this is all about the params, but we need to give a name to the event. And I just want to warn you about this because think very carefully about your event naming, because the event naming is like the ID of the event. So it's what you need to correlate all the data, to build the dashboards and the reports. And every time you change this name, you lose the power to easily correlate the data. So if you're changing the event name every week, it's hard to build a dashboard where you can see the events and the results of the user interactions in a month or a year. And so most of the tools break this, but there are some that have some features. So always look at what the tool you're using offers and try to understand how can you implement this. And most of the tools allow you to export a list of the events you have implemented and consult all the events that you have. So you don't need to have a Google spreadsheet with all the namings as we did. And it didn't work. So when you are creating this culture around data, my next advice is to try to leverage a code review for analytics as well. And try to include this in the review you're making to your team merge requests. And especially because the developer might be too focused on the functionality and it's easy to miss the analytics, try to remind them to add or to contribute with other properties that might be useful or different naming, and bring your feedback for analytics as well. If you have a feature release checklist or a definition of them, you can also add it there as it makes it easier to not forget. And most of the tools offer a debugger, which is really useful to find the events you're using. So if you want to mimic a flow in production or locally when you are implementing, you can just interact with your application and see the events that are fired in this debugger. So this is segment debugger, but most of the tools offer one, and you can see in real time the events you're firing while interacting with your application. And this is extremely useful for non-engineers that just want to build dashboards, like product managers or designers, and they can just interact with your application and see the list of events they need to build their dashboard against. And when you're implementing, you can also do that. So it's actually useful for everyone. And now you might be thinking that, okay, but my data wouldn't my data be polluted with all the local dev testing and staging and everything in the same source? And my answer is no. If you use different sources or environments for development and staging, or even if you want to filter that out, most of the tools allow you to do that. So we actually use a source for development and staging and another one for production. So we are sure that we are not messing with production data, and we are looking only at development and staging. So this has been really useful for that. And I couldn't talk about analytics without talking about privacy. And quick disclaimer, I don't have a legal background, so just take my opinion on this, and this is what I've been finding during this process. So to give you a quick context about this, let's start with cookies. So not all of those analytics tools use cookies, but a lot of them do. So if those tools use cookies like Segment, if user hasn't accepted the cookies, you can track them. And we lose about 30% of data because of this. So be aware that you need to follow cookies compliance on this. And then you have a lot of regulations. Most of them are different according to the countries your product is at. So always be mindful of regulations like GDPR for Europe or CCPA for California. And most of them are concerning data privacy. And they, for example, you need to give the users the option to explicitly accept or deny cookies. And again, always take into consideration the regulations that apply in the countries your product is. And then personal identifiable information. Play on the safe side here, and probably don't need to log their address or their credit card number. So keep it as essential as you can. And users always need to know if you're logging personal data. So you need to let them know through your terms of services or privacy notice. So take this into consideration. And again, always try to reach out to someone from legal to help you finding the right solution for your product, the countries you're in, and everything, because these are very sensitive matters and no one wants to get in trouble because of this. And it doesn't matter if you have all the data in the world if you do nothing with it. So to read the data, you have two options. You can use the tools themselves. So for example, we use the data from Segment goes to Mixpanel, and we use Mixpanel to analyze and to build our reports. Or you can use an external warehouse. So let me start by tools. As I was saying, we use Mixpanel. This is a screenshot from Mixpanel. And you can see here that we are only adding the events we want to track. So this is the name ID that I was talking before. You can add some conversion criteria, some filters. For example, we always filter for employee emails. So we know that our data is not biased by internal interactions and operations. You can define your range, and you can build a lot of charts. You can have funnels like this one that was measuring the drop-off rate in a form. You can have pie charts, wherever you feel like fits better your use case. And then always try to keep a change log or some kind of log of the changes. Mixpanel allows you to add annotations. So basically, you can leave a comment with the time that a change happened. And this is really useful when you're analyzing data. And if you see any change, you can see if it's correlated to a change in the product. And now I'm talking about external warehouses. Most products allow you to connect with external databases or data sources. Single store is not a supported segment data storage yet, but we use it anyway as with some internal code that copy the events to our own single store database. And then we just consume the data as a regular database. For example, we can use our feature notebooks to create some charts as well. And basically, we allow the team to either use Mixpanel or our single-store database itself. This database has a lot more data, so we can correlate with other things. But basically, you can use whatever suits you and the team best. So I want to leave you with this quote, which says that most decisions should be made with somewhere around 70% of information, because if you wait for 90%, probably are being late. And if you're working in an early stage product or a startup, you know that you need to ship fast, to learn fast, and iterate, and don't feel like you need to have all the data in the world and the flows all covered, but try to find a balance between what works for your team, for the engineering team, and the data you need to make some backed up decisions. So those are the 10 things I wish I had known when I started working on front-end user tracking. And thank you so much for your attention. Feel free to reach out to me.